My kids had the tablets with the big rubber covers that are blue and yellow and purple with cat ears. And it wasn't until I saw the data, the documents from these companies and met with these families that I was like, no, those are gone. These companies are designing their products not just to exploit and addict your kids, but they're also designing them to make sure you can't stop them.
Hello and welcome back to In the Meanwhile. I am Marcus Harrison Green.
And I'm Nora Kenworthy, and it has been a particularly spicy week in Trump's hellscape.
Yeah, we're here to help you muddle through the harrowing losses, the petty victories, and the mind bendingly dumb events of the week. So buckle up, folks.
Marcus, one of our listeners this week told me that they call our show opener the Rage in Review, and I like that. I think they're not wrong. Everything is rage worthy.
Yeah, I love the alliteration of the rage and review too. That's pretty awesome.
I know. We might have to start branding that. We start with rage, we end with joy. But but I actually thought that we could start with something good this week, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, if you can find anything, Nora. Yeah, sure.
Well, though it seems much longer than a week ago, this past weekend, Americans actually took to the streets, Marcus, as you might remember, for yet another No Kings March. Organizers estimate it was the largest protest mobilization of Trump's second presidency, larger than the last No Kings March. It's just one of these is bigger, right? Each one
Yeah.
is completely peaceful. And I just want to take a moment and savor that.
We should, Nora, particularly because when this podcast first started, I think it was like, it wasn't purposeful, but it was ended up being in sort of conjunction with the first No Kings
Yep.
protest. So it's kind of full circle here, folks. I'd say, we have long since moved past performative brunch protesting here. People just continue to show up because there is power in numbers. There is power in mobilizing with thousands of strangers and in realizing that we do truly keep each other safe. Also, it's also fun to just really piss off Trump. So there's that too.
It absolutely is. A White House spokesperson dismissed Saturday's marches as, quote, Trump derangement therapy sessions. And as I heard them say that, I was like, well, that is weirdly accurate, actually. Trump is deranged. We're all outraged, and solidarity is therapeutic.
That is true. You think they would wonder why it's spreading too. If could there be something that's going on? I don't know. But
Mhm.
that said, it's a fair point that therapists and inflatable costume sellers are probably the only ones doing well in this economy at this point. So
Fair. Yes.
there is one other point of good news, though.
Is? Okay, let's go for it.
Who knew? Who knew? No, but a judge has ordered Trump to halt his ballroom renovation project indefinitely. The judge's order had many exclamation points. It basically is a judicial version of check yourself before you wreck yourself or wreck the people's house, I guess.
Yes, yes. I am really celebrating this one. I know the halt is probably temporary, but I, for one, will enjoy not having to see a constant stream of pictures of the White House becoming the white supremacy house in real time.
Oh boy, the white supremacy house sounds like the world's worst frat house, Nora, and that is saying
Yes.
something. Unfortunately, though, halting the renovations definitely won't stop the white nationalists inside the building. And speaking of not stopping, things in Iran are either ramping up or winding down, depending on which second of audio you listen to from Trump.
Yes. Recently, he said about the war, and I'm going to quote him here.
You know, you never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over.
We could go further, and we're going to go further.
We're doing a 5-day period. We'll see how that goes. And if it goes well, we're going to end up with settling this. Otherwise, we'll just keep bombing our little hearts out.
Ah, Jesus. Well, that definitely clears things up and reassures the stock
Doesn't
markets, I
it?
guess. Not to be outdone in efforts to lower morale, this week ICE announced it would be deploying agents to Marine Corps graduation events to identify undocumented family members. Just let that sink in.
Nothing says welcome to the U.S. military, Marcus, like kidnapping civilians. Womp womp.
Oh boy. Yeah.
I know we keep saying that the cruelty is the point, but like, really, it feels like the cruelty is the point here, and it keeps getting worse. I want to plug a short reminder for folks that our conversation last week with Gina Baskin, who's a former Special Forces member and a queer veteran, is truly a must listen for those who want a more nuanced and fiery perspective on what this war is asking of service members.
Yeah, it really is such a great conversation. Um, but meanwhile, happy doom scroll week for anyone following the many Supreme Court decisions that could strip away our rights. On Trans Day of Visibility, SCOTUS struck down a Colorado law that banned so-called conversion therapy, which is honestly more like conversion abuse. And that is not a joke,
Yes.
folks. That is real.
Yes. Marcus, it really does upset the Nazis when we try to ban torture. So I guess we can't do that anymore.
Jesus, I guess not. My word.
We've also got birthright citizenship and the Voting Rights Act on the chopping block. So this week definitely has get in, loser, we're dismantling the Constitution vibes.
Very true. Although I will say, w- as of our time of recording this podcast, the
God,
Associated
don't
Press
jinx it, Marcus.
is reporting that maybe there's hope with the birthright citizenship thing. I'll just say that. Fingers crossed, folks. But given all that, you'd be forgiven if you missed a few court decisions this week. Because in both New Mexico and California, two unlikely cases claimed major victories for kids and parents against some of tech's most powerful companies. In New Mexico, a jury found Meta to be responsible for deliberately exposing children to sexual exploitation, imposing a penalty of $375 million.
And then, only a day later, a jury in California said, hold my beer, and found Meta and YouTube responsible for creating highly harmful and addictive platforms that impact the mental health of youth.
And this is not just a case of everyone hates Mark Zuckerberg, although a bad week of Zuck is always a good week for the rest of us. These cases are the first of what's expected to be an avalanche of cases aimed at tech giants, finally holding them to account for deliberately harmful products.
And here's what's remarkable. These cases were considered the longest of long shots. No one expected them to win. And they didn't just win, they cleared the runway and set out the landing lights for every case that's to follow.
And this is also a story about how families and children, grieving, harmed, and angry about it, took on the world's most powerful companies. Along the way, these cases opened the door to a closet full of skeletons that tech companies did not want the public to ever see, about the deliberate ways they build products to be especially addictive and dangerous for the most vulnerable users.
It's also a story, Marcus, that raises huge questions about what comes next. As many countries are grappling with how to rein in social media, users don't just need to win court cases. They need governments to actually regulate these companies. But creating regulation that limits harms and also protects our rights is not an easy task.
Yeah, so to help us unpack all of that, we have a special guest joining us today, Laura Marquez-Garrett, plaintiff's attorney in the LA social media victims case, just back from the trial and ready to unpack what happened and what comes next.
Laura is an attorney at the Social Media Victims Law Center, which represents more than 4,000 families alleging harm from social media. Laura received their law degree from Harvard University and joined the Social Media Victims Law Center in 2022. Since then, they have filed more than 1,200 complaints against social media and AI companies, and also have frequently spoken to the media about those lawsuits, including on Democracy Now! Along with Matthew Bergman, Laura was named to the Time 100 list for health in 2026 for their work on behalf of social media victims.
Laura, thank you so much again for joining us today. This is, truly an honor. We want to begin by asking you, what made you want to dedicate your career to holding social media companies to account? I mean, you could have easily been at some, white shoe firm making, tons of money, and instead you're actually, trying to fight the good fight here.
So this is a great question because I was at a white shoe firm making tons of money. I actually spent my first 20 years in big law, and I typically defense side. I had actually, right in 2020, I finally got an equity partnership. I had the corner office. I had a view of the Space Needle. I had just put all the fancy furniture in there. And I really enjoyed my job. My firm that I was at, my dear friends are there. It is an incredible firm as far as, particularly for big law, and I plan to retire from there. I was the hiring partner. So I did all that. And actually, what happened was I met our founder, Matt Bergman, and I read his first complaint, which was in draft form at the time. And it was a story of an 11-year-old girl who had died. And when I talked with him about her history, her medical records, um, her school records, and what had happened on her journey, and then I watched the film Social Dilemma, and at the very end, they asked the designers of these products, "Do you let your kids use them?" And they didn't just say no, it was a hell no. I wouldn't let my kids anywhere near them. And as somebody who had represented designers, distributors, manufacturers for years, every time I represented these companies, we would buy their product. We would let our kids use their products. We would wear their products. They were so proud of their products that for me, that moment was the light bulb moment where I said, wow, like not only, yeah, they are hurting kids and they know it. And I have four small kids. And so as a parent, everything I do, it's very instinctual. As a parent, it took about 15 minutes to realize this is what I have been working for my whole life. These companies are harming children, and my kids are right in that target.
Hmm.
And so it was the craziest and yet the easiest choice I'd ever made. I walked away from the corner office. I walked away, I took a six-figure pay cut to join up with a single attorney firm at the time, a man who was like, "I'm gonna do this," who invested millions of his own money and said, "I'm gonna do this even if I lose every penny. Do you wanna join me?" And I said, "Hell yeah, I do." Because my kids are in danger. And so that's my story. And that's why I do this work. And it is I work twice as hard as I did before, and I make, I won't say half as much, but I make less. I took a major risk, and it was the best choice I ever made.
Hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And we're so glad you did.
Yes.
Um, so you now have filed over, I think, 1,200 cases. And this recent California verdict is quite honestly being compared to the early days of big tobacco litigation. Does this feel like a tipping point to you on the inside? Or do you think we're still earlier in this story than people realize?
I think both can be true. So it's actually, unfortunately, I think we're over 1,500 cases now. It is just the demand is there. The cases just never stop, and these are cases where we've assessed and we find the evidence of causation, and we find the threads that say, hey, these are strong cases that need to be filed. I think, look, we've been doing this for 4 years. The tipping point is here. Now, how long that takes, I think it's years. I think these companies, as long as they can still make more money harming our children, addicting and exploiting them, as long as our system is one where they can make more money every month than what they're going to spend on high priced attorneys and
Yeah.
lobbyists, they're going to keep doing it. Right. So this was the first case. This is definitely the tipping point because now the world, we got two verdicts in 2 days. Right. So on the 24th, you had New Mexico. New
Hmm.
Mexico comes out with a 300 and something $1 million verdict where they find like that Meta has not only lied to consumers, but has designed its product in a way that is exposing children to child sexual abuse. And you have over 300 million. And so that happens on what, a Tuesday. And then on a Wednesday, you have Meta and Google, a jury that finds not only were you negligent, not only did you fail to warn, but the kicker in there is that they found punitive damages. And the finding for that required them to find that plaintiffs proved by clear and convincing evidence. That wasn't a preponderance, that's clear and convincing. So, like 70, 75%, that plaintiffs proved by clear and convincing evidence that both Meta and Google acted with malice, oppression, or fraud. Right. So now you have two verdicts that you're exposing children to, you're literally connecting them with predators and lying about it in New Mexico. And in California, you acted with malice, oppression, or fraud, and you put those together, and I think they can appeal all they want, they can deny all they want, they can't erase the truth. And what the world got to see in those 2 days was, oh, they did it. They did it, and two juries decided they did it. And the last point I want to make on that is, plaintiffs don't usually win bellwether cases. So the KGM case, which SMBLC filed back in, I think, maybe 2022, 2023, that was the first test case. It was randomly chosen by the court. That wasn't a plaintiff pick. It wasn't a defense pick. It was a random choice among 1,000 cases that could have been randomly chosen, which means that we didn't have the strongest evidence, right? We didn't have the weakest. It was the first trial, so we had to cut most of our experts on our evidence because we had limited time. We didn't know what would resonate with a jury. And this is typical of these bellwether test cases. And so, in historically speaking, in tobacco, they lost several of these before they started winning them. So we put that all together. You have a very clear tipping point. You have truths that the world is not going to ignore. And now, but these companies are still going to delay, and it could be years. So
Got you. Yeah, it was certainly a bad week for Mr. Zuckerberg there.
it's 20
I
billion. I heard he lost in 24 hours of his own personal. He took a 20 billion cut to based on the stock price, according to some outlets this morning.
Goodness. Well, even with that, he's still rich. So I,
That's
you
we
know,
200 more to go, guys. We got 200 more
yeah,
billion to go. Once we make it more expensive for them to kill kids, and I don't say that lightly, that's after years of looking at their own data and their own documents, after we make it more expensive for them to prioritize profits over people, until we can do that, they're gonna keep doing it.
1000%. I well, I want to ask this. For decades, companies have been shielded by Section 230, which, the most basic reading of that, says that platforms like Facebook, Instagram, X are not responsible for the content that they host. But, these recent cases are targeting design, not content. Can you walk us through why that shift is so significant and what it ended up unlocking legally?
Yeah, so Matt Bergman, our founder, is he's a plaintiff's attorney, and he took on asbestos companies, and for him, in looking at those Facebook documents in 2021, his sort of realization for him was, hey, this isn't speech, this is design, this is what tobacco did, this is what asbestos did, but none of us had those documents, so none of us knew what the companies were doing. And I want to say, like, I recommend that folks do go back and look at 230 because we're used to seeing what is it, the 26, 27 words that tech loves the most, and that ignores the like 200 other words. So, for example, in the preamble, it talks about user control. It talks about access to resources with user control, which is not what we have anymore with these products. If you go to 230D, it talks about obligations of the platform. And there's actually a whole section in there about how they're supposed to tell us when we start to use their products what third party products are available so we can protect kids from harmful content. There's like a whole section in there that nobody's so somehow these companies have written out all but what they like. And there what you have in jurisprudence, unfortunately, you have a world where 230 was enacted and related specifically to what we would call like neutral platforms, intermediaries. So AT&T, when you're texting or making phone calls, AT&T isn't making recommendations to you. AT&T isn't looking at your data, not really. It's not controlling your data. It's not pushing data to you. It is a neutral platform like Netscape was back in 1996, right? AOL, these companies that these were truly neutral bulletin boards. So what happened, practically speaking, is Zuckerberg and Google, they start creating these new products and they piggyback on 230, at least in my opinion, and they say, oh, this is just like the internet. We're not doing anything different. We're not controlling anything. That was a lie. And I don't use the word lie lightly, particularly as an attorney, but over the course of the litigation, as we were looking at cases, even on things like jurisdiction, we would find cases where Snapchat is like, oh, you can't sue us in Oregon, but what these cases do by looking at the truth, it's not even that we shifted anything. We just used those documents to show what was really happening. And what was really happening is these aren't neutral platforms. There is no user control. These are new products, and they are products that are profiling, targeting, exploiting our children. They're addictive designs. It's all very deliberate and intentional. And unfortunately, in the past, 230 prevented injured consumers from even being able to peek behind the curtain. Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower, she changed all that. She changed all that by giving us, giving parents, giving kids, giving all of us just a little bit of what they knew on the back end. It's amazing what the truth can do, right? Is it Brandeis that says electric light is the most efficient policeman? That's really the catalyst here. Um, it was always happening. We just didn't know it. And now we do. And now you have attorneys like Matt Bergman, Kerry Goldberg in New York, really pioneers in this field who were always willing to take these people on and who said, look, something's wrong. And maybe we can't prove exactly what it is because they won't give us access to the data, but we all know it and we have a
Mhm.
right to find out. And that's what's happening now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the reason that these legal cases were so important, not just for the plaintiffs themselves, but for the public in general, is because many of us had a sense that there was something wrong here, right? But there was so little transparency with these companies and so little known about what decisions were actually being made on the inside. Even as a researcher who studied tech companies, there's so little that you can find out, right? And like Frances Haugen's testimony kind of like cracked the door a little bit. But it's really with these cases that we've been able to kind of like dig into some of that
Yep.
data.
Yep.
But for our listeners who maybe haven't followed these cases quite as closely, can you dig in a little bit on just sort of a description of what types of design features we're talking about when we talk about social media and that are particularly harmful to children? I know the phrase like digital casino came up in court, but I'm curious, like what are these features that maybe like a casual user would recognize, and why are we particularly concerned about them when it comes to kids?
Yep, and actually, I just pulled out a Word doc, so I make sure I don't re-go 'cause we can do a whole list, right? But so one of them, so I use the term digital nicotine. And when people say, "How do you wanna fix these products?" Force these companies to get the digital nicotine out of the products. Now, what you've got these companies that have hired psychologists, neuroscientists. There's literally now public meta documents with brains, pictures of brains and brain scans, and arrows pointing to the frontal lobe and saying, "Well, kids are particularly vulnerable, because they're undeveloped frontal lobe. And here's how we can change the product to, if you will, sort of capitalize on. That's called opportunities, right? They don't say capitalize. It's called opportunities. Here's what you do. So features include everything from a biggie is this. It's for folks who are listening but can't see. It's the slot machine mechanic. There's literally an entire science behind it. It's the variable intermittent rewards. We get these dopamine hits when you pull that lever. So it's called pull to refresh. There is that little pull to refresh feature is giving you a little dopamine hit. It's designed that way on purpose. Additionally, you have the never ending feed, right? So Meta, once upon a time, you could get to the end of your feed and then they realized, oh, when you get to the end of the feed, you stop scrolling. So that's gone. So you have that never-ending feed and the continuous scroll along with the autoplay. The autoplay is a biggie, folks. So look, the version of TikTok that's available in China is called Douyin. And Douyin has this thing, it's my understanding, where it's a 5-second pause between each video. That's not speech. That's not content. That is a break. And think about a kid's brain. The difference here is, and I have small kids, and when I started this work, they were allowed to watch YouTube because I monitored. It was YouTube Kids, it was marble races and car races. Oh, these are safe. Then experts told me, hey, it's not just content that's hurting kids and their brains on YouTube. It's the high contrast colors, it's the way the interface is designed, it is the short form of the videos and the instant gratification and the auto scroll or sorry, the autoplay. So sure enough, I come home and I say, okay, no more YouTube for my kids. My 4-year-old, 4, loses her mind. I had to wean her off. Now, my point to all of this is now that I have Disney Plus in the house, once I got my kid weaned off, I don't really have to monitor screen time because they get bored. Because when that video stops and when there is a pause, that's when they look out the window and say, oh man, it's sunny and my friends are outside. Let's do that. Right. So that autoplay is really, really dangerous. And by the way, they didn't even have a turn off button for that on YouTube Kids for the longest time because autoplay is what keeps you hooked. You also have, I'm going to reference the book Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams, chapter 44 of that book. Now, this isn't what you think of as a feature, but it is. It's something that people need to know about, which is that Meta has algorithms. They know when the users are happy, sad, or when their self esteem takes a hit. So Meta goes to diet and makeup advertisers and says, hey, good news. We have this algorithm when a teen girl is at her lowest. For example, when she takes down a profile pic because she doesn't get enough likes, they're monitoring everything we do and all of our personal data. They have it to that level of happy and sad. I've seen the documents, I kid you not. They go to advertisers and say, great news. When a teen girl is at her lowest, we can hit her with a diet ad. We can hit her with a makeup ad. You're going to make a fortune. right? So that I'm going to call that a feature too. It's a type of marketing they've got going on. It is something that parents and kids need to know about. It is something consumers cannot protect against. You've also got notifications. I don't I don't know about you, but back when I had a Facebook, I tried to turn those things off once upon a time because I'd get the little like red bubbles and I'd be like, oh, I got to check. It took me 4 times and I still never figured out how to turn them off completely. That's on purpose. Notifications. That's another addictive feature. The speed of the algorithm, folks. Imagine you get a TV and the remote control doesn't have a volume button. The manufacturer gets to control your volume, right? That's crazy, and we would never put up with it. That's what these companies have done. The speed of the algorithm, when they have it, when they have the speed at its highest setting, if you will, that algorithm is learning in real time what will keep you and your kids hooked. It is literally assessing thousands of data points and it is making sure that you cannot look away. And if you have an undeveloped frontal lobe, it's even more effective. They could give us a remote control and they could let us turn the speed up and down. It's literally that simple. In fact, at one point, Meta researchers allegedly, I mean, I heard the story from a former engineer that the Meta folks had gone in and said, "Look, kids aren't sleeping at night. What if when they log on, we say what time do you want to go to bed? 10 p.m. 2 hours, an hour before that, we just have it programmed to slow their algorithm. They can put the phone down." Now leadership says, "Well, no, we would lose all those hours." Right. So that's another example of the speed of the algorithm. I talked about autoplay, never ending scroll, the intermittent rewards, gamification on Snapchat. Your kids are getting a score that you can't hide. That's your popularity meter. And that Snap score, you get points for connecting with people. So when Snap says, "Here, do you want to add 200 random strangers on Quick Add?" It doesn't say strangers. It says, "These are your friends." It uses that word, little animals with balloons. These are your friends. We will reward you. We will give you points for connecting with these friends. These friends, unfortunately, often are drug dealers and pedophiles. They're being connected algorithmically, right? That's just I've just listed off what, like a dozen features. All of these things are things that they control on the back end. They're product features. They're things they could change. They could give us the choices, the remote control, and they don't because they have the most effective addiction machine going, right? They have got kids. I mean, I think Adam Mosseri testified in court about kids using Instagram for like 16 hours in a given day. That's not addiction, not technically, right? He compared it to Netflix binge watching, but we're talking about children. We're talking about
Mm.
who literally are not sleeping and who are waking up and sneaking access after parents go to bed. And by the way, they'll get a burner phone. There's nothing a parent can do if they want it. $50 over at Target will get you a burner phone and a Wi-Fi connection. Their friends will give them their old phones. There are kids who've literally found phones. Your smart TV that's Wi-Fi connected, they can get onto most of this stuff on a smart TV or a PlayStation or an Xbox or a Switch if you don't have the parental controls on. So that's that's an initial list. There are more.
Wow.
Those are
Yeah.
things that we know about, and they are not meant to help us. They are not meant to give us user control. They are meant to addict us and our children in particular.
Yeah, gosh, who knew the Disney would have some redemptive quality here for
That's
I just the least
it's
bad of it.
it's the least bad, right? And even Netflix kids, look, I mean, Netflix I think has the autoplay, which I don't love, but
Mhm.
kids' brains are a lot better off watching 30-minute and 60-minute and 2-hour videos than they are watching 60-second clips that are just boom, 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 hitting their brain over and
Mm.
over.
Yeah, yeah, well, I wanna actually stay on that point for this question because you have met with hundreds of families and
Yeah.
analyzed just reams of internal data. And you kind of alluded to it, but what is something about the impact of social media on kids that the general public still doesn't fully grasp? I was talking to another parent and they were saying that, their knowledge, it seems like the knowledge of what we do know about these impacts are still sort of as fluid as a drop of water at this point.
Yeah. I know a lot. Look, what I know that most parents don't. So I've been studying this stuff for 4 years. I'm a pattern person, so I retain a lot of like I can't get around a block, but I can tell you names and stories and in fact, look, I'll share this little piece. I've got these tattoos on my arms of suns with rays, and there are 296 rays. Each of these
Mm.
rays is a child who's died, not
Oh
just the
my
ones that are
god.
suffering, a child who's died in connection with social media and AI harms, right? So this is Selena, that's the 11-year-old I told you about. You've got CJ, you've got Emma Claire, Anna, England, Leilani, Ariane, like all around this, right? So there's different harms. There's Snapchat fentanyl poisoning, there's accidental death, like dangerous challenges being targeted at them. There's suicide, there's all of these different, there's sextortion, we have a couple murder cases. There's all of these situations, and what I would say is, the patterns are just overwhelming at times, and the patterns that we've seen, we can reverse engineer often. So if you say, "Let me tell you my story, when the harm started, etcetera," we can often tell you what platforms were used because it is so predictable. It's platform design. What
Mm,
I can't tell you is what steps the parents took, and the reason I say that is because I haven't found those patterns. We have parents who allowed devices and who didn't. We have parents who had monitoring software, who had rules, who had limits, we had kids with pre-existing conditions and kids with none. High income parents, low income parents, parents who literally did everything right and then some, things that I'd never heard of, right? We have parents that
mm,
got the best medical treatment in the world, parents that couldn't afford it, like one parent, two parent. The patterns are in the harms on the platforms. And so I would say to parents, one, like look for the documents that are coming out in litigation, even just a few of them. Look, those were enough to convince a jury in the test cases
right.
to clean sweep this. The New Mexico jury took less than half a day and to deliberate. And so folks know that's usually really bad for plaintiffs. When a jury is that fast, that usually means plaintiff lost because there's no question. It was the opposite here. It was a 300 and what $50 million verdict in less than half a day. So I would say to parents, look at those facts. As far as what I can tell you from behind the scenes, it's a lot, and none of it is pleasant to hear. But I see these patterns every single day, right? It's you have a kid who is doing just fine, either struggling in school but working on it, or really thriving, really thriving. I mean, Selena was really thriving at age 9 when she got that first tablet. And I had those tablets, by the way. My kids had the tablets with the big rubber covers that are blue and yellow and purple with cat ears. And it wasn't until I saw the data, the documents from these companies, and met with these families that I was like, no, those are gone, because it's a form of grooming, and I don't say that lightly. It's a form of grooming. It's let's get them accustomed to this. Let's tell them they need it. When in reality, these companies are designing their products not just to exploit and addict your kids, and certain companies, not every company, but they're also designing them to make sure you can't stop them. That once they get in the door, I think TikTok determined it would take like X number of videos to hook a kid on average, and that ends up being less than an hour of TikTok. So you could do you could literally have a device free home. You could get electricity out of your house. But if your kid's at a friend's house and is watching TikTok for an hour, you've now got a kid who might be the best kid in the world, but for the first time in their life, they feel like they need something, right? That's addiction. It's think about what addiction does to a 40-year-old and stick that on a 12-year-old. And I see these kids' journals. So let me add that. I have kids who've been journaling since age 6. When you read these journals and you see a kid who is close with their family and doing great and thriving, and all of a sudden you see Instagram start popping up. They got their first Instagram, but mom doesn't know. They can't tell mom because mom doesn't want them on it. Wow, I got 27 followers. This is amazing. This is you see a kid. I mean, the kid. So now you've got this kid that starts to resent mom and dad. Why aren't they letting me? Why are they stopping me? I just want to be popular. I just want to have fun. I just want to make friends. I just want to. So you've got these products pitting these kids against it. And you have a kid who now not only resents mom and dad for standing between them and the thing they feel like they need, but starts to hate themselves for the conflict they create in the family. And you see that in their journals. They start to like, I'm a terrible person. My parents are upset. I'm causing all these problems. I hate myself. I'm anxious. I'm depressed. I'm not sleeping at night. Eating disorders, right? You see these conflicts and they start to blame themselves. Basically, look, I've seen this more times than I could count. You put that all together, and this is absolutely a terrible situation where parents don't stand a chance. If you are a lucky one, and if your kid does not have whatever that gene is that plays into addiction, you're a lucky one. It's not because you put a certain restriction, and I promise you, because I work with families that put in every kind of restriction. If you are an unlucky one, no amount of restrictions are going to help because these companies are going to make sure they get to your kid whether you want them to or not.
Yeah. Wow. This is certainly enough to keep all parents up at night worrying. But I think there's an aspect of what you're saying that I think is really important for people to hear, which is you can do everything that you think is right as a parent, and it's still not enough, right? And I think that's the design piece, the kind of corporate intentionality piece that these trials are trying to get at.
Yeah.
Um, I wanna
And
ask
knowledge. So I
yeah,
wanna give you something a little more hopeful than what I just
okay.
everything I just said, which
Please,
is
please give me something hopeful.
so, look, I have little ones, and people ask me about our rules and stuff, and my answer is, look, I can't even protect my kids with everything I know. I can't stop them from getting access when they're on the school bus or when they're in class or when I'm not around. And kids make their own choices. So, in my household, the number one issue is knowledge. Something that every parent can do is they can teach their kids. They can give
Mhm.
them knowledge. Like I remember being in high school, and they had a drunk driver who had gone to prison for killing a young woman, and that young woman's mom was also there with the drunk driver, and they talked to us, and they scared the crap out of us. And drunk driving was something we never did as a result. This is really bad stuff, and people are like, yeah, but it's depressing, it's dark. It's also true.
Mhm.
And so my number one piece here is my kids know. We talk about these kids who've died. They meet these parents. They understand, because I can't stop them ultimately from using his products any more than I can stop them from smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
But I can tell them the truth, and I can show them these are the risks. And at least then they have the ability to make an informed choice. And I would say that for parents now, that's something that most parents don't do that we need to start doing. Like, look at these documents, show them to your kids, grab the
Mhm.
complaints, tell them the stories, show them, hey, here is what's happening on Snapchat that's really, really bad. This is
Yeah.
what exploitation looks like. You're gonna get, if you're a 12-year-old girl and you go onto Snapchat, you're going to get explicit photos. Make sure your kids know that. Make sure they know this is not okay. This is not normal. If you go onto TikTok, you may get murders and suicides. Instagram, Facebook, like about 20% of the kids I talk to have been shown murders and suicides on these apps. None of the adults, right? Doesn't happen in our algorithms, happens in theirs. And it's a matter of saying, like, you have a choice not to use these products. If you do use them, just know that if you see things that make you sad or upset, it's not you. Like, kids actually believe, they say our algorithms know you better than yourself. So I've met kids who are like, look, I didn't tell my friends or family because I thought if TikTok showed me that, there must be something broken in me, right?
Oh,
Talk to your kids. There's nothing broken in you. If bad things happen on these apps, tell us it's not you.
yeah. I mean, I think one of the challenging things about taking this on, just as a human being, is that it's so ubiquitous, right? I remember I was reading, I think it was a New York Academy of Medicine report on social media and youth mental health, like big summary of the evidence report, and one of the things that they started it off with was they sort of said something to the extent of, this is sort of like studying the harms of tobacco, except everybody and their kid is smoking. There are no non-smokers in the room. There's like literally not a control group
And the
to compare
tobacco
it
companies can change their product in real time to
for
evade
each
liability.
person individually. Yes. Um, but I guess one thing I wanted to ask you is about how we change children's behavior when the adults in the room so often are also using these harmful products. And sometimes, like Marcus and I have a podcast. We have to get on social media to like promote our podcast every week. I remember I was at a New York City Department of Health summit with youth leaders around the same topic. And the youth leaders were like, well, it's nice that you're talking about us, but like our parents are pretty addicted to their phones. Like, what do you think we should do about our parents? And like I know that's true. As a parent, I know that's true. So, do you think that these lawsuits will expand more broadly to include harms for adults, or do you think they will force us to also reckon with adult patterns of behavior? Or is there something, I know there's something uniquely harmful about this to kids, but I also see the harms in adults, and I wonder how much this has legs to travel to that population as well.
So the issue with adults, one is you have the undeveloped frontal lobe, right? So you have vulnerable adults, and you have all of us who are ultimately vulnerable to addiction, as adults. But the degree of impact tends to be, and I just gave the example of, imagine an addicted 40-year-old and stick that on a 12-year-old. You have the longer term harms. Legally, it's also, there are fewer hurdles when it's a child because companies have greater duties. So there are legal reasons why you see the focus. It doesn't mean what they're doing to adults is okay at all. It's just that adults also have more ability to consent. Right now, I think that all of this is related, and at some point, people are going to get tired of them hurting everyone, not just kids. But I will tell you in my own life, I use the example of a bottle of wine, which is, and I think of my own use as a bottle of wine. Because when I started this, I was very much like, well, look, I can drink wine at the dinner table and my kids can't drink it, and that's okay. I had this defensive adult position because I get it. Like I was using Facebook and I was using TikTok and I was like, well, I'm an adult. Now, over time, that perspective has changed as I've seen the impact on kids, as I've seen, the impact on adults. And now I think of it like a bottle of wine for my own use. So the issue is I realize that it is one thing for a child to see you having a glass of wine at dinner. It's another thing when you're carrying a bottle of wine around all day, every day. And as adults, we don't realize that's what we're doing. So when we would watch a movie and it was a kid movie, of course I'm not engaged. I'm only there for the kids. And so occasionally I'd be like, oh, I'll just check Facebook, and I'd pick up my phone and I'd check. And I think as adults, we don't realize how much our kids are watching and the fact that our kids are aware that we're doing it because now our attention isn't on them, it's on our phone. And it wasn't until I thought of the phone like a bottle of wine that I realized, no, like that's not what I want. Right. So I started putting, when we would watch movies, I would put my phone in the other room. Now, eventually in January 2025, I made the choice to get rid of my Facebook account and my TikTok, and it was hard at first. It's now the easiest thing ever, and I'm happy I did it. But I will say one of the first things I noticed was I watched the entire Harry Potter series with my kids, and I never once checked my phone, and it was right next to me. Now it took 2 weeks before I would automatically reach for it, like muscle memory, and check. After that 2 weeks, I can sit there with my phone near me without those notifications, without that doom scrolling sort of temptation, if you will. I can sit there with my phone upside down and never check it. It's incredible. So again, I would say I think all of this will ultimately have an impact. I think as people really see their documents and get angry like these juries did and see what these companies, they called our children herd animals. Meta has a document that says tweens are herd animals. Tweens are special, but it's not, it's a special that made me see red. Tweens are special, right? They're the most money. We need to go after them. That's kids under 13, right? When you see get the young ones, the younger the better. These are direct quotes. When you see how they talk about our children, I think it will impact our own relationship with these apps. And I'm not even going to say devices because folks, I can keep my phone next to me without picking it up for hours at a time now that I have the addictive social media apps off of it. Because believe it or not, look, and I'm not advocating for phones. I am saying, believe it or not, your phone would get a lot more boring if you didn't have addiction on it. It's I got rid of the things that I couldn't control myself. Even if it was mild, I got rid of the things that were designed to addict me. And now I have a phone and I have a much healthier relationship with my phone because I can put it there and I can never check it for hours at a time while I watch a kids movie and spend time with my kids. Now it really is a bottle of wine. And now I can make an informed choice when I want to have that glass of wine, and when I don't. And most nights I don't. So I would say, I mean, I think from a legal perspective, the kids' harms are more straightforward, and those will come first. My hope would be that as these cases bring out more documents, and as the public awareness of what these companies knew and said and did increases, we will start re-examining our own relationship. To your all's point, when you are getting on these apps to raise awareness, that's not a bad thing, right? That's a very calculated glass of wine. When you're
Mhm.
getting on there to make the world a better place, that's a very calculated glass of wine. It's when you're supposed to be focusing on your kids or watching the game with your kids or doing something, and you find yourself jumping on because you can't help it. That's the harmful
Mm.
piece.
Yeah, I had another friend say, in talking about their social media usage, that they had to sort of come to the distinction of like, is this platform using me or am I using
Yep.
it? Right.
Yep.
Um, I do have to say, Laura, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Heat, but you kind of remind me a bit of when uh, the the criminal antagonists in the movie are led by Robert De Niro's character. They're talking about Al Pacino's character, and they're like, "Man, they're tenacious. They never give up, and if we're not on our shit, we are definitely fucked in terms of them, coming to get us." And that is, you definitely remind me of the Al Pacino character.
I love it. I don't
without
think
without
I've
the
ever been compared to Al
yes.
Pacino, but I take that as the highest compliment, man. And look, and that the way that is it. That is who I am. That is who these survivor parents, these parents who've lost their children. It's funny because I just described one today as tenacious. Like it's the
Mm,
tenacity. Yeah, no, we will literally never stop. And that's
yeah.
why they lose this, folks. And I would and look, we're just parents. Like really, that is it is imagine your kid is in shark infested waters and then tell me, do you just jump in and save them or do you stop and think about it? You get your ass in there and you start getting those kids out of the water. That's what these parents are doing. And it's a real problem. Oh, it's
Mm.
yeah, they have a real problem because if we don't quit, they don't win. At the end of the day, it's basic math. If we don't quit, they don't win.
Yeah, and can you, because I know that there are a lot of our listeners and just not even just our listeners, but a lot of people sort of starve for triumphs and victories. I remember reading, uh the couple of oddly enough, some social media posts on Blue Sky, when this case started, and it was like, oh my God, these social media companies, they have millions and billions of dollars at their
Yep.
disposal. There is no way, zero, silch, that, these folks can win. And yet, this happened. Like, can you just talk about that and how, to your point, right, that not having a defeatist attitude sometimes can propel you to continue on here.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people ask me, and early on, especially, like, how do you think, like, really, how do you think you can win? Like, you're, you're a couple of attorneys, you're a couple of parents. These companies have unlimited resources. It's crazy, right? And look, we win because we must. When you think about what's at stake here, folks, this is like our kids, not just a couple kids. This is all of our kids. This is our future. This is, and so, when it comes to the parents in this fight, when it comes to survivor youth, we have young people who've been through this. These are people, we know what we're fighting for. And when you know what you're fighting for, and when that is our kids, when that is love, when that is all the things that we have on our side, you do it because you have to. This isn't a choice that any of us make, and in a sense, right? I mean, it is, but it's not. You do it because you have to. I mean, if I don't know if you all have kids, but if your kids, literally, if there is a train coming for your kids, you stand in front of that damn train and you don't care about what's going to happen. And that's what the world is starting to open their eyes to. And that's the issue. No, and honestly, look, I told you when I left the corner office, what was crazy was Matt Bergman, our founder, it was a one attorney firm. We had one attorney and a client coordinator and our just IT genius. And that was it. There were three of them. And so and he at the time, people were in the legal community were like, you're crazy, you're gonna lose every penny. He said, well, then I'm gonna lose every penny, but I'm going to do it. And he set his heels in. He's like, I will do it if it's just me. And I was like, no, dude, you need to hire me. It'll be the two of us. And now we have 9 attorneys. And every step along the way, I will tell you, we've won every major battle in this fight. As we've gone through the cases, the motions to dismiss, the expert motions, the plaintiffs have actually, like, we have done the impossible time and time again. It turns out impossible just means it takes a little bit longer and requires a lot more effort. Because ultimately, what's the alternative? There isn't one, right? And I would say, look, if every parent out there listens to this, if every parent picks up and reads chapter 44 of Careless People, if every parent looks at just some of the documents coming out of these cases, these companies are toast. Because when your kids' lives are on the line, even these, like, I want to, these youth advocates, these youth survivors, these 20 something year old kids, young people who should be out there doing what I was doing in my 20s, right? Like at least in college, like enjoying myself, partying, having fun, they are
Right.
spending their lives fighting for our kids, because
Mm,
they don't want what happened to them to happen to our kids. Like that kind of strength, you can't make it. And as Meta now knows, you can't buy it. Um,
absolutely.
and so that's the answer. It's you know what? I say bring it. You want to appeal, go ahead. You want to fight, you want to delay, go ahead, because we will never run out of steam. We just won't. We won't.
Yeah. I got my money on you all, so yeah.
As you should, man. I was right, as you should. During the trial, I told someone, I said, "Oh, if I had to bet my house, I'd bet my house on us." I said, "Oh, wait a sec. I did. I bet my house, my 401k, my kids' college funds, my future, all of it." And it was the best bet I ever made because
Wow.
this kind of strength that we have in this movement, um, we win because we have to. You don't get to kill kids. You don't by design. These are not, and I want to add that for the more technical people who'd be like, oh, but everything, people compare it to like cars and guns. And what they're missing is there's a difference between inherent risk and design-based risk, right? Cars go really fast. There's only so many seatbelts and other, airbags. There's only so much you can do. If you go 60 to 70 miles per hour, you take a risk. Same with planes up in the air, right? But the difference is that's an inherent risk. These are design-based risks. These are not neutral platforms and open bulletin boards where you might happen to have a bad experience. These are companies who are saying, "Oh, hey, Mark Zuckerberg, yeah, we're addicting kids." I mean, there's a quote from an Instagram document that says, "Instagram's a drug. We're basically pushers." And I know Adam Mosseri doesn't want to hear it. He freaks out when I talk about dopamine, but there it is. We're hurting kids, right? Like this is not an inherent risk. These are design-based risks that their own documents say, "Hey guys, if we did this, kids would be a little safer." Sextortion's a biggie. Their own documents, Meta's documents said, "Hey, we are pushing millions of known predators, not maybes, like people that we know have multiple accounts on the back end. They've been reported dozens of times. We're pushing known predators to children." And then for years, the team say, "Well, what if we're not going to fix that problem, right? Of course not. But what if we just made it so that adult strangers couldn't talk with kids directly unless the kid knew them and had added them as a friend?" It takes them years to do this, folks. And then when they do it, the damn thing's broken. They do it in
Yeah.
2021. And then their own employees on the back end say, "Oh, hey guys, we still have adults reaching out and direct messaging kids like at a 50% rate, millions and millions. What do you think? Should we tell the public? Should we tell the public that this fix is broken?" And they say, "No, it hurt our reputation," right? So you have these parents who are hearing, "Oh, teen accounts. This is great. Like my kid's going to be safer." We have one mom that let her kid use Instagram. He was 13. School was about to start. That kid was dead 2 days later. Two
Mm.
days. 2 days. 13-year-old baby, beautiful young man. Those parents did everything right. Right? Apple had it set at 12 plus for these kids. They just changed to 13 plus, and that's something. Federal law didn't even let kids, they don't let these companies provide their products without explicit parental consent until 13. And up until a few months ago, the Apple App Store had them rated 12 plus. Explain that, right? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, let me ask one question and then I'll let Marcus finish it up. So you're kind of pointing us towards some of the legislative side of solutions to this issue. And there's obviously been some really tough conversations around what a good legislative approach looks like for kids across not just the US, but lots of other countries at this point. What have you learned in this trial that and how does that inform how you think about potential legislation? There's age verifications, there's school phone bans, like there's a lot of options on the table. But what would actually put the onus of responsibility on these tech companies to not design and release harmful products?
That's a it's a great question. I would say, look, you have this Kids Online Safety Act in the Senate. You have a Senate version of COSA that passed in the Senate, and I believe late 2024, 91-3. Right, that is as bipartisan or nonpartisan as it gets. And then Speaker Mike Johnson of the House refused to put it up for a vote in the House. Right, so it went nowhere. He also got billion-dollar AI facilities in Louisiana the following year. And what I'm saying is, number one, we need to clean Congress. We need to require transparency in Congress so that anyone taking money from these companies or striking backroom deals is accountable for that. Because we do have allies on both sides of the aisle. We have viable options. The Senate version of COSA is a viable option that focuses on design, not content. But you have millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions in big tech lobbying, attorneys, and front groups. I mean, orgs that are being funded by big tech that will come out and talk about, well, what about this? What about that? So that's one big issue. The other thing I want to say, though, when you talk about phone bans in schools, I'll start by saying, look, when I was in school, like you didn't get to bring your video games into school. You didn't get to bring a lot of things into school because it was school. And so I do generally support anything in school that is meant to help kids focus on education and increase safety. And I think that school is a place for education, and that's okay. In terms of age verification, what I would say is I'd go back to digital nicotine. It make these companies get the digital nicotine out of their products. From a regulatory perspective, we need to require full transparency, right? Transparency will help. We got to see what they're doing. Also, it's making them get the digital nicotine out of their products. That's a COSA type law. I am not opposed to I won't say age verification. That's tricky because the reality is these companies already know how old everyone is. You don't need age verification. Just make them use the data they use for marketing and product development. If they don't collect age data, no harm, no foul. If you don't know how old a kid is, fine. Then you can use stated age, right? You can use, and your kids will be a lot safer, because if I say I'm 42, believe it or not, Snapchat will be really safe compared to whether I say I'm 12 or 13 or 14. That is, people don't realize, if Snap thinks I'm 42, I will be exponentially safer than if it thinks I'm 13. So I don't know that age verification is the way to go. The other one, of course, everyone talks about are age minimums. They call them bans, but they're not bans. It's restricting health harming products. We do it for cigarettes. We do it for alcohol. We do it for tattoos, right? We do it for a lot of things. And my answer to that would be the same thing, which is let's fix the products. I'm not opposed. And the reality is, yeah, if you're a cigarette and if you have nicotine, in the US, you got to be 18 to buy that cigarette. Now get rid of the nicotine and we can talk, right? Bubblegum cigarettes, there's no age minimum on bubblegum cigarettes. Those are safe for kids. And so it's, you have all these concepts mixing together, but ultimately the answer is let's fix the products, let's require transparency. And ultimately, if these companies choose to addict, they choose to keep the digital nicotine in there, I do think it's okay to say, hey, because of developing brains, we'd rather that addiction not be brought into the picture until age 18. And by the way, we want you to disclose it. You need to tell people when you're going to addict them so that they can make an informed choice. And so I think again, you have a situation where all those things can be true.
No, absolutely. Well, Laura, we'll finish up here, and I just want to say thank you again for being so generous with your time today. And in attempting to finish things up on a hopeful note, I will ask, tech does seem to move faster than our ability to understand its impacts. And so, as you continue to look towards what's on the horizon of new tech and its potential harms, what do you see that, yeah, is concerning, but also what do you see that is promising?
So the key with new tech folks is, look, when we put products out to our kids, when this is something that's going to be handed out for free in classrooms, in many cases, we should understand the potential for harm before we lock it in. And that's just the reality. We need to change the way we do things. We need, and it's okay for parents to step in and talk to school administrators and say, well, wait a sec. What are you going to let my kid use? What does it entail? What data are you taking? They're taking our data. So I would say like that, I'm going to put up more warning signs there, but then I'm also going to say that the positives are we can do this. Look, these families have already accomplished what everyone said was impossible. I mean, 2 verdicts in 2 days, transparency. The families are going to DC to fight. Parents Rise is an organization created and run by parent survivors. Check it out, Parents Rise. You can sign up. They can update you on stuff. The positives are we can do this, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be hard and it's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to require us to go to DC and to demand transparency, basic regulations, right? We're not talking about regulating neutral platforms. We're not talking about regulating free speech. We're talking about commercial entities that are providing non essential. And when I'm talking about these health harming products, this isn't the internet. These are specific. And I also want to say, though, and here's, I will leave on a little bit of a positive note for new tech. Imagine you can't compete with addictive cigarettes, right? If I want to create a non-addictive cigarette, I have a problem because addicts aren't going to buy my product. Imagine what the world could look like if we were to get something like the Kids Online Safety Act in place, something that the Senate version, something that requires these companies to get rid of the digital nicotine. Imagine the playing field that gets opened up. There are ethical designers out there, ethical programmers who have all these great ideas for these fun products. But what I've heard for 4 years over and over is, yeah, I can't do it because I can't compete with addiction and I'm not willing to addict. So maybe that's the positive note we leave on, which is, look, if we can get things like the Senate version of the Kids Online Safety Act into Congress, like force Johnson to put that up on the floor. He doesn't have to vote for it. Just put it on the floor so that the rest of our representatives have a choice. If we can do that, we could actually have a much better world. We could have a world where tech works for us. We could have kids with 20 social media product choices and none of those exploit and addict them. Right. And the key is there, if you have a non-addictive product, if a kid has a bad experience, what do? They stop using the product, they go to another one. That's what they can't do right now. So there is a rainbow at the end of this, folks. And it means that the next few years are going to be really hard. We're going to have to make tough choices. Parents are going to have to say no in a way that it just rips their heart out. Like products that they thought were safe, they're going to have to reevaluate. Maybe they're not safe. And if they're not, then I got to make tough choices, right? We have to have open dialogues. But ultimately, the new products, once we get the digital nicotine out, once these companies have to be fully transparent, we could end up with a lot of incredible social media and AI products that are actually going to enrich our lives without exploiting and addicting us. So keep fighting now. We're on our way there, and there really is a potential future out there that is one that we all would be happy to live in.
Well, and thank goodness that no one fights harder than a parent who wants to protect their kids. So,
There's a lot of parents out there. Let's
Absolutely.
we need them all to fight. So they should check out Parents Rise simply so they know how to fight back. There are all sorts of instances now where we need people to reach out to their representatives. We need people to go to Congress, and we need people to stand up for kids.
Awesome.
and
Well,
thank you so much for standing up for them. Yeah.
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 Thank you, folks. It's been a real pleasure. I'm gonna have to go watch Heat, I think it was
Oh,
called.
yes. Please do. Yeah.
I'm gonna
It's
check it out.
Without your phone.
it's a great movie. But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us. This was just incredibly enlightening. Depressing, but
Yeah.
enlightening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope, there's hope. Look, there's hope. And these 2 verdicts in 2 days proves it, right?
Yeah.
These parents,
Absolutely.
these families, these plaintiffs' lawyers have already accomplished what everyone thought was impossible. So now we keep going and we accomplish more.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
All
Well,
right.
and
Thank you
thank you
guys.
so
Take
very
care.
much. Well, Nora, we are running short on time today, so I will just say this as my recap of that conversation. Why freaking who? I will say it is like I mean it's easy. It is very very easy to be jaded in life, but I tell you that
Yes.
the fact that somebody like Laura woke up this morning and went to work, I feel slightly better about our chances in the world. Just slightly, slightly.
Same. I will also never look at a person holding a phone and scrolling on it the same way again. I will always see them also holding what looks like a bottle of wine. So thank you to
Yes.
Laura for giving me a very healthy reason to put my phone down.
That is a wonderful visual indeed. That said, okay, shall we continue our joyathon today um, by going right into our 8 ounces of joy this week, Nora?
I guess I'll go first. Mine is a sciencey joy this week. There was a paper that came out in Nature this week that showed that humans have been living with dogs for 5,000 years longer than we thought. In fact, dogs have been in humans' lives since before we even created agriculture, which I think speaks to the importance of dogs to humans in general, as well as our capacities for cross species empathy and companionship. And um, the researchers, in talking about this research, noted that even with these very early signs of human dog relationships, humans were like feeding the dogs their food and like giving them special burial practices. And one of the researchers even said probably these early humans were also talking about how cute their dogs were. So I love this story. It makes my heart feel warm to think of early humans being like dogs before crops and food.
That is
Uh,
so freaking awesome. M- my that is I think that's maybe the joy for both of us, quite frankly. I think but um I my joy this week is it's the actor Aldous Hodge, who plays the role of Alex Cross, the detective on the show Cross on Amazon Prime. Yeah, boo Amazon, but the show is pretty decent. Anyway, he was being interviewed on a podcast, and he's I believe 40 something year old black man who was talking about his own sort of journey and discovery of loving himself. And I just always
mm,
think, particularly these days, there just continues to be such toxicity right around things like masculinity and what it is to be vulnerable and what it is to
yeah.
share your truth with folks, right? And for him again to be such a high profile actor on a high profile television show and to share freely about his journey, particularly with I just recently saw that documentary on Netflix about the manosphere. My God. Uh,
Ugh,
so seeing
yeah.
that in like the contrast to just the garbage and toxin, right, that so many people, so many young people are consuming, about a certain type, if you will, of masculinity, to see somebody in Aldous Hodge, just presenting as fully human, fully vulnerable, and also, the fact that, as you said, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was okay to discuss his own journey of self-love that took him
Hmm.
uh, darn near 3 decades, right? Um,
Yeah.
I think the more examples we have of that, the better. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that was my joy for this week.
That
So,
also brings me back to our amazing conversation with Gabriel Teodros, who also spoke about
mm,
like love and the importance of love in the Black community and for of self love in particular. That makes me really happy.
absolutely. Well, you know what I love, Nora, I love this show, and unfortunately, we have to sign off from it today. So, shall we do
Yes.
so?
Well, folks, even if we are suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, at least our delusions are collective. We are glad
Yes.
that you have been in community and joined us for another week of rage and disbelief.
Yes, and a special thanks to Laura Marquez-Garrett for joining us this week and bringing the kinds of fiery resolve and optimism we need to take on the most powerful. It is the reminder that we all could use, that when we fight, yes, we can win.
Thanks as well to our steadfast producer, Jessica Partnow, and to Ahama Luo for the music that keeps us not only marching, but dancing. And despite the fact that both Marcus and I feel very much personally harmed by our phones every time we get a news alert, we have not yet gotten our payouts from big tech. So we rely on your support to keep the mics on and our pessimism in check. Head to inthemeanwhilepodcast.com to subscribe or donate.
Yes, and you can also catch In the Meanwhile Wednesdays at 5 p.m. on KVRU or wherever you stream podcasts while researching the dwindling number of countries that might welcome U.S. citizens seeking refuge.
As always, new episodes drop every Friday. Until then, put down your phone, stop doom scrolling, and take care of each other in real life. We'll see you in the meanwhile.